Hello, dear viewers. My name is Jibola Dabo. Keep watching Mid Morning Show.
Yes, you just have to keep watching the mid-morning show on BCOS. Another Monday edition of the mid-morning show. My name is Dolakbo Olaomi. How was your weekend? And I'm sure because I had lots of rest. Even
Thankfully.
though, hopefully, like it's okay. Usually say, make sure you have lots of rest. It's really, really important. And you know, I'm never alone on the show. I have Toke with me. Toke, how are you? Good morning.
I'm fine, thank you. So happy birthday to you, Dolapo.
Oh, thank you so very much.
I will never forget. Anyway, I know you actually thought I was going to forget. No. So happy birthday to you. Long life and prosperity. You will celebrate many, many more years.
Amen.
Of course, it's the mid-morning show. I don't work solo. And, you know, it's been an eventful week. A whole lot of activities for everybody. And we are here once again, and it's a Monday. But the question is, did you have a restful weekend? Did your Monday night help? No, Sunday night. Did they help you to have a fantastic Monday? The reason why many people are so happy or so jovial when it comes to the Monday mornings is it's a restful Sunday. So did you have that restful Sunday? If you don't have it, don't worry. We're here to keep you into the mood. It's a new week, which means it's a new vibe for you. It's a new time for you to set aside and say it's going to be a great week. And that is why we are here for you. I am Adetoke Olaleye. When they say a new week, it means it's an opportunity for you to get out of whatever is stopping you from moving forward and tell that thing that I'm pushing on and not giving up. And we are not giving up on the mid-morning show today because we are here for you again.
We never give
this up. Monday morning. And today's topic is a very crucial topic, and it's been a topic that's been going around, but not too, the noise has not been there, and it's always there, but at the end of the day, it goes silent. And it's about mental health. We have, and it's focusing on teenagers today. Teenagers out there, they have a whole lot bottled up inside of them. Aside the fact that the social media is there, aside the fact that they have to find themselves due to their psychological change, and aside for the fact that there's peer pressure around them, they have a whole lot going up inside of them, and they have nowhere to pour it out to. And some people will ask, where are the parents? Where are the guardians? Where is the society? Well, the society is there, the parents are there, the guardians are there. Is it that the people are not fully aware that teens do have mental health? Or is it that everyone is shying away from it? Or is it that even the society itself is passing through its own mental struggles? So these are the questions we're going to be asking ourselves today, that how do we protect the teens and their mental health? And the topic today is teens mental health crisis. We have a guest in the studio who will be shedding more light, putting in a lot of such light on this topic. But there's one thing we should know: the teenagers too really need someone to talk to them as well.
Exactly. We need to put an insight out there for people to understand the issues, you know, the causes, the triggers, the warning signs. Especially those warning signs, because so many people don't really get to know those signs when these teenagers are, you know, showing the signs out there. And most importantly, we'll be talking about the roles of schools, the roles of guardians, and the solutions and support for this topic. All right, like Toke rightly said, we'll be talking about teens' mental health crisis. But before we go into that, let's quickly take this feature on drug abuse. Please stay with us. It's still the
Drug misuse is generally associated with prescription medicines. Prescription medicines are meant to be taken as directed by doctors, as these types of drugs can cause adverse side effects if directions are not followed. Drug misuse happens when these drugs are not taken for a purpose that is not consistent with legal or medical guidelines. Examples of which include taking the drug at the wrong time, stopping the use of drug too soon, taking the incorrect dose, forgetting to take a dose, taking a drug that was not prescribed to you, taking a drug for reasons other than why they were prescribed. Repeated misuse of drugs can easily escalate to drug abuse. Drug abuse happens when drugs, including alcohol, illicit drugs, or any psychoactive substances, are misused to get high or inflict self-harm. It is also termed as substance use disorder. SUD. As persons who abuse drugs experience significantly altered thinking, behavior, and body functions. The main difference between a person who abuses drugs and a person who misuses drugs is their intent. The former uses a drug to elicit certain feelings, while the latter takes a drug to treat a specific ailment. An example of drug misuse is when a person who cannot fall asleep, after taking a single sleeping pill, takes another pill an hour later, expecting that it will work on him or her eventually. However, it is drug abuse when you consume sleeping pills to manage your mood. The severe form of drug abuse is drug addiction, which is also known as severe substance use disorder, SUD. It is a brain disease that affects the brain and behavior of the person. Those with an addiction have a disorder that affects most, if not all aspects of their lives. They often miss work or school, endanger their families physically or financially, suffer health problems, get into legal trouble, and other serious issues because of their substance use. They are unable to change their habits to improve their situation. This is why many people with drug addiction become jobless, homeless, or separated from their families. Some even die from this substance use.
All right, it's still the mid-morning show, and that was a feature on drug abuse. Drug abuse is real, and on our topic today, we are talking about the teens' mental health crisis. There was a time I was coming very early to work, and something disturbing actually caught my attention. Teenagers on the streets, smoking, drinking, and something came to my mind. I'm like, do they not have guidance? Do they not have parents? And the society we are passing through them. So it means if we ask them, okay, what's wrong? They don't always, as at that point in time, I wanted to get down and ask, but I was already running late. So these are things we're seeing out there. The teenagers have become adults all of a sudden, without even anybody telling them, hello, you still are teenagers. And some of them, if you even ask young ones, they don't even know when they're teenagers. They're not even fully aware about the psychological change around their bodies, around them, their mind, their soul. They don't know anything. Nobody's taking them through. And mental health has become a very, very, very important issue. And teenagers have become a target. So I think on the topic today, we will be uploading a whole lot of like you said, the warning signs, how we know that teenagers are having a very tense mental health, and why is it so important for us at this time to pay more attention to the teenagers, and of course to enjoy the conversation and to learn more on the show today. We have our guest, Mrs. Oluwatoyin Ogedengbe. She is a professional counselor and a sexual integrity educator.
Good morning. You're welcome.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome to the show.
Thank you for coming on the show today.
All right, so let's start from the understanding the issue part now. What does it really mean when we say teens' mental health crisis?
Thank you so much again for having me on the show. And I must say that this topic is really apt for the times that we're in. And so if we go on straight ahead to break it down, who is a teenager? So you're looking at anyone who's between, we'll say, 13 and 19 years of age. And then we need to understand, like one of the hosts just said, what happens with people within that age bracket. They're transiting from being children to being adults. So there's a lot that is going on psychologically, physiologically, that they're trying to understand. So when you talk about mental health, we want to understand, of course, everybody deals with it. When you understand that mental health is basically that which happens in the realm of your soul. I'm not going to be using, some, jargons like we say. I want us to be able to understand, because incidentally, before I came on the show, I saw a video, a couple, LinkedIn, making a cry because they lost their 17-year-old child to suicide, and saying all hands must be on deck. So we need to understand, because a lot of times you look at it, what are they dealing with? What are they thinking about? They're not working. What's stressing them? So you hear that a lot. But when we understand that every person is tripartite in nature, there's the spirit, that's on one side, you have a soul, and you live in a body. So that which we connect with, that I see, is the body. But the realm of the soul is the realm of the emotions, of the will, and the mind. So that's, if you, for instance, look at the car, a vehicle that you can see, what you see first is the body. You see the color, you see, the tires and all of those. You do not see the engine. So the soul, as it were, would represent that. Whatever state that engine is will determine how much of the capacity that vehicle has been built to exhibit, how much of it can actually exhibit. So the mental health, I also must say, we need to demystify that. It's not score. It's not madness. And once you say mental health, the next thing is that, what's Yahweh? No, that's not what it is. Now, the mental health is a state of the balance in your emotional being, that you're well emotionally, in that state of your mind, of your reasoning, in that state of your will, where you decide what to do or to not do, and the state of your emotions where you are responding, affective domain, as it were, as you're relating to people based on what has happened around you. So you see, the mental health is really critical and crucial. And then World Health Organization says that about 1 in 7 teenagers, is exposed to crisis in mental health. And that's a global statistics. But if you bring it down to areas or locations where there are, deep-seated issues, maybe insurgency, insecurity, economic hardships, it will be higher. In a nation like ours, it will be higher. So we're looking at how is a person able to maintain a balance. So also look at climate, for instance. So you talk about, climate generally, and then you're looking at good weather, bad weather, rainy season, it could be stormy, it could be sunny, or it could have a good day. Those are like external factors that can affect how you feel as a person. So
even the climate can affect us.
So now look at the mental wellness or mental health as a situation in which a person is able to respond appropriately without losing their mind, without losing their essence. Yes. So you look at a crisis comes into being where you're talking about where there's a psychological distress. It's a psychological distress in the person's inner resources. Okay. So what makes up the inner resources will be determined by background, family upbringing, the way that person has been brought up, the way they've been spoken to, external environmental factors, that make up who we are, our essence. And you want to define that by 3 P's and say, your perception about who you are. So when those internal resources cannot match effectively the situations that go on around a person, they cannot effectively maintain the balance. So something happens that causes sorrow, or teenagers now, somebody says something, bullies them, talks about the way they look. If what they have on the inside cannot match that you have received that,
yes,
it just bounces back because at home you've received a lot of boost, about how they talk to you, your well-being, that you are not what people say that you are. You're created in the image and the likeness of God, and you're not aligned. But when the internal resources cannot adequately match how we respond to those external forces, it leads to a what you call dysfunctionality or lack of operational functionality. So that is the crisis that comes in. So the teenager at that point, so you talk about the teenager is at that developmental stage.
Yes.
They already feel like they're adults. Because, of course, that's part of the brain that's responsible for them to be able to maybe receive love, show emotions, is already perfectly developed. The amygdala, like we call it, already perfectly developed, But the prefrontal, that you call the logic point, that helps them to be able to, reason and be able to say, no, I won't take this, is still developing. And according to research, it's not fully developed until the person gets to 25 or 26 years of age. So they're still developing.
So it's still a long journey.
Still a long journey. So imagine a vehicle is traveling at, you say, maybe 100 miles per hour. That's the speed. And the brakes are not in place. That's the picture that you have of what a teenager is going through. They have developed all the emotions, they can feel like you feel, but they don't have the brakes in place to be able to say, no, I have to stop here. No, I can't take this.
Well, with all that you've analyzed about who this teenager is and their mental health. Why has this crisis or this problem become so silent in the society that nobody even tends to look at it? But we are seeing the green lights, we're seeing the red flags.
The red flags, okay. So that's why we call it the silent killer, because the noise is actually all over around us, but we are not just paying attention. And we need to understand also that the issues that the teenagers, the Gen Z, the Gen Alpha, the issues they're dealing with are not exactly the same with the issues that we dealt with when we were teenagers. Some may be similar, the physiological changes, peer pressure and all of that. But we have the crisis more now because of technological advancement, exposure to the internet. Majorly. Wow. It's a major factor. It's not the only factor, it's a major factor. So, and that's why we're saying that in order to be able to help the teenagers, you're beginning from the point of perception. So from the home front, as they're growing, it's not when they become teenagers you start to speak to them about who they are, about their essence and their worth. From when they're infants. In fact, research also says that from when the child is in the fetus in the womb, they start speaking positive words. So the child is born into an environment where all they get to hear are positive words, not a child that is woken up by, verbal abuse and all of that and becomes normal for them, because it would do the same to other people around them. So that's why you find those who bully, if you really go and check, they're dealing with some issues. Our culture, there's that stigma, For instance, let's say comes to you and says, I'm feeling depressed. You look at them somehow. But if they say, oh, I'm having stomach ache, you could just quickly say, oh, I have a headache, just go and take paracetamol. But if they say, I'm feeling depressed, there's a way you look at them differently, like what they're going through is different from what a person. So it becomes somatic pain. They try to hide it because you're not going to believe what they're going through. So a point now, what you're doing, I must say it's really commendable and laudable, that we need to really improve on this advocacy. Okay. We need to also increase the sensitization and awareness about what these teenagers are going through, the exposures particularly that they're going through. Of course, the peer pressure around them, the people around them, the physical environment, but most importantly, the exposure on the internet.
But what are they going through?
Now, I tell you what. Now, a teenager has access to the phone or maybe TV or some way that it relates with some other persons. I cite an example. I saw a lady, met her at the salon sometime, older teen, and she walks into the salon, like a tomboy, we went into some conversations and she starts to say, that she's interested in playing basketball and she's got the height. But that's, it's a male-dominated terrain. And that they say to her that, no, we don't want that when you're moving around and, your breasts are dangling. that, no, you don't belong here. If you want to fit in here, you've got to get those things flattened. That's what they said to her. And she got that. That's not from the internet. That's from an environment as a result of wanting to socialize. I want to belong to a group. But these are the demands. These are the things that they're saying to me. And they began to introduce to her, to say to her, we will introduce you to some drugs that will prevent the development, this physiological development for you, so that you can belong. Now, tell you what, that young lady, you talk about the gateways. She heard that. So that goes into the mind, the realm of the mind now, where she's beginning to think like, oh, so I'm not worth it. Oh, so I have to bend. I have to be like this. It begins to affect our sexuality, the sexual orientation, to begin to feel that, okay, so it's only people who are like this who can fit into this kind of field. And before you know, it wants us to take on the different aspects of himself. So the part that you, after GS3, I also went into the science class, Abbott and Lambert, and there was something about Fikemba. You're carrying the textbooks and you're also posing like, but I was not built for that. So you are speaking to the teenager at that point as they're growing. The parents or the adults around them can even recognize, oh, this child is good with creating things. So you know what you do. The toys that we buy for them from when they're young is not to create a mold in them. It's to help us discover what they're capable of doing, the potentials, inherent potentials with which they have been created, so that they can be the best version of themselves.
Okay, so with all that's been said now, where can we say particularly that the society got it all wrong? Would we say it's the parents? Would we say this is the schools? Would we say it's the in general now?
We're all to blame. So we're all to blame.
Nobody's left out.
Nobody's left out. And until we get to that point where we'll go past the blame game, as it were, to say, oh, we're pointing fingers. Let's all just look at it. Like Yorubas, if you point one, the 4 other fingers are actually pointing at you. So let's take a holistic approach to it and begin to look at, okay, all the stakeholders in the society, your look points. Premarital counseling, for instance, you're giving parents an understanding of what to expect when the children are approaching adolescence, to prepare them that speed of the dopamine. You know, when you go on social media and get involved in pleasurable activities, you know the feel-good hormones, you know how you feel. And for the teenagers who are transiting at that point, that's all that the body wants.
At that point?
At that point. So, but as the adults around them, you're already preparing them because you have an understanding. We were not taught these things when we were growing. So these are things that we got to learn along the line. And now we're able to say, okay, when we're even speaking to, it's not just speaking to the teenagers now, speaking to the parents, then the school environment. I was at the school sometime with my team and we're saying, oh, should you be going through anything as, teenagers that you are, please feel free and speak with your counselor. And everybody goes, oh, almost everybody, like counselor. And what really is the issue? Oh, okay. So we gave them pieces of papers and said, be anonymous about it and just write, what exactly, why can't you go to the counselor? And almost everybody wrote the same thing. That if you go see that counselor and talk with that counselor, the following day, you will become the topic in the school. That if you enter the staff room, all the teachers will look at you like, that's the bad child, So training the trainers, the teachers, that even the counselors, many times, we just rounded off the Oyo State Conference of Counseling Association of Nigeria. And one of the issues on the front burner is the fact that even counselors who are in some of these schools are not allowed to play the role of counselors. Many of them are just working as subject teachers. So they're not even working as counselors. So in cases where, okay, you say you even have a trained counselor, they are not allowed to also fulfill that role where these teenagers can go talk to them. So we're talking about a holistic approach. The religious organizations, the churches and the mosques, we're also training. Let us train the religious leaders. Let them be aware of these issues. Let them understand that teenagers also deal with mental health challenge. And what really is mental health challenge, to demystify it and cut it off from that feeling that once somebody begins to say, then the next thing is, oh, go see, you know, they need to go and see a psychiatrist. That is not it. So it begins with that perception. What are we saying to them? What are we also modeling to these teenagers? Because what you model to them, and they begin to feel insufficient, they begin to feel that, oh, they need to get, you know, get more, you know. On my radio show yesterday, we're talking about contentment. And you see, these are the things that they struggle with at this phase, when they are feeling insufficient. Some will be because of the background. So if they who they should be, they get to the school as well, the teacher is also mindful of the language. So I was saying, trying to make an analogy, class. You never pay attention in class. That's already a negative reinforcement. So you're already saying something to that child, this is who you are. There's already labeling. So, but if that teacher would do better, the teacher should go, you know, a positive way. I observe your body doesn't seem to have been well rested, maybe yesterday. Did anything happen at home? Is there a way that I can be of help to you? That child will respond better. That child will feel loved. Yeah. That child will feel that, oh, we feel respected as well. That you are not just going, because a lot of times also because of our tradition, we're also looking at, you know, this adult children thing, and they don't have a say, they don't know anything, but they know a lot and they're dealing with a lot. So the way that we also address them when we observe, that means that I need to be observant. That means I must have been trained to be able to observe that, oh, when a child is like this, there's something happening with that child. Now, you talked about those teenagers that you saw.
Yeah.
Some of them are finding ways. So I was talking about the fact that when the internal resources are not sufficient to be able to mitigate the external friction, what happens is that coping mechanism, you know, there are good stressors. Everybody, stress is good in some regard. That, okay, you're going, for instance, you need to prepare for an exam.
Of course, you're going to go through stress.
I mean, go through stress. I needed to be here today. My mind was on it. I needed to prepare. That's some kind of stress that is good for the body to keep you intellectually alert, okay, read and all of that. But when it now gets to a point that the coping mechanism can be in terms of the support system that you have, either from your inner being or from the external factor. So the inner being will be what has been put in you from childhood. Okay. So for some of the teenagers, that's where you may need to do what you call mindset re-engineering, where you need to, like the talks, what they've been told, the negatives that they've been exposed to.
So we now turn back to the negative. And begin to
bring the positive influence in terms of what you are exposing them to, the things that they're reading, the books they're reading. You know, we're saying these days that, you know, reading culture is gradually
already fading away.
You know, because of what you see on social media. Like I said, that the social media is not designed for well-being. It's designed for engagement. The more that you look, the more that you click, the more you want to do. And what that is doing for you is that it's setting your mind, getting your mind agitated. And especially with regards to what you're seeing. So what you're seeing has a way to influence.
Okay. So sorry now. We need to take a short break, but we'll be right back. Please stay with us. It's still the Mid-Morning Show. show, I beg your pardon, on BCOS television. And we have a guest with us. We have Mrs. Oluwatoyin Ogedengbe. She's a professional counselor and sexual integrity educator. We are still on the topic, teens' mental health crisis.
Yeah, there was this quote that was actually there.
Quote.
So when we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves.
What do you think?
Totally agree with that.
So we're not able to change a situation, we change ourselves. So the situation that we have found ourselves in, we say that if you continue to do the same thing the same way and you're expecting, a different result, then you must be a joker. So if we've been at this for a while, and we should be asking ourselves, what really do we need to change? And if you ask me, putting child safeguarding policies in place, especially in public spaces, is really important.
But before we go into these policies, there's this thing that came, during the time we're going on. These problems you're saying happening to teenagers actually happened to us as well. But there was a major bane that seemed to kind of overpower whatever was going on with us, and that's self-esteem. So what role does self-esteem play when it comes to teenage mental health? Because I realized that even when I was growing up, I never knew what low self-esteem that I had until I was in university, when someone kept talking about self-esteem. I was like, so it was low self-esteem I had. So can we now say that self-esteem, what role does it even play when it comes to the mental health for teenagers?
Thank you so much. Some of these things, like we said, maybe because we're not appropriately named.
Yeah.
We didn't know, this is what this is. And I mean, I'm sure almost everybody would have had to deal with that at some point in their lives, or, as a result of maybe things they've been through. I had to deal with that at some point in my life. I grew up in Mushin in Lagos, and when I had an opportunity to go to a secondary school, a federal government girls' college, I'd been exposed to a particular background that put me in a particular state. That when I now began to relate with some other people at some other level, I felt inferior. So what would help, like I said, is that we say to these teenagers, do not allow your background to put your back on the ground. So what we are speaking to them, who is speaking to the teenagers? Who is speaking to them, and what are we speaking to them? So if you're speaking to them to say, irrespective of your background, you can still turn out to be who God has created you to be. So they see in that light, and you're giving them the right exposures through books. They can have the exposures through books. They can have the exposure, of course, the social media we're talking about. We can make positive use of it. It's not all bad. So we have, YouTube, the very good, resource materials, documentaries that we can expose them to, that can show them that, you've even had people, maybe people like Ben Carson, bringing it down home here. You're talking about people who've had to go through issues. I remember Goodluck Jonathan, former president, would talk about how that he went to primary school, was it secondary school, without wearing shoes. And, so you can point at people and say, so what you're speaking to them or what you're modeling to them makes them to know that they can be who they should be without allowing those external forces to get at them. I talked about climate, for instance. So you can have a bad weather, but are you prepared that you've seen the signs that, it's cloudy, it's going to rain? What do I need to put in place? Do I have an umbrella? Do I have a raincoat? So that when this rain falls, or I see the sign, I know that, no, I do not need to go out now. I need to stay indoor for some time. So those are the coping mechanisms that you're speaking to the teenagers, and you're saying to them, there are ways that you can cope with these external forces that are mounting pressure on your mental wellness. So who are the people that you're relating with? Who are the friends you're associating with? Are they friends who are mounting pressure on you? Bullies around, we saw the video, recently. You're also teaching them to be able to speak up. You need to also let them know their rights. So from when the children, they understand their rights. So when somebody is violating their right, they are able to speak up to trusted, I say trusted adults, because in some instances you see also, the level of the mental health crisis that we have, comes in different categories. You have it also come in form of gender-based violence, sexual gender-based violence for some of them. So you see some of them dealing with trauma. So trauma coming as a result of what has happened to them.
I think, I think that is where I'm going to be bringing up my next question, which is basically going to peer pressure now. Because I could remember back in the days, especially while I was growing up, I whenever I'm in class, like in my primary school, whenever I was in class then, I could remember when a teacher says, stand up and answer a question, I will become really, really fidgeting about it. So what do you have to say about that? Because sometimes it feels like even looking at your students in class, it affects you, because you have some people in class that that knows more than you do. So when a teacher asks you to answer a question, it affects you. You'll be like, can I really answer? Even if you know the answer to it. What do you have to say?
Thank you. This is multidimensional, the response. Now, the space in the classroom, you talk about safe spaces. We need to create safe spaces. There must be rules also guiding interpersonal relationship among children, because the children also among themselves growing into teenagers can be the ones mounting the pressure, that can affect the mental well-being. So you have them in class, you have rules. Somebody answers a question, do not jeer at them, don't boo at anybody. Whatever anybody says, it takes courage for that person to be able to open their mouth and say whatever it is they're saying. So there are rules that are in place when children are growing up and in such spaces, so that children who may have challenges, with maybe speech impairment or even memory, the teacher must also have such kind of trainings to be able to identify. So it's even worse with children who are living with disabilities. So, and the disability now, might not be the physical, especially those who have, issues with, maybe the mental wellness and all of that, maybe autism and the likes. So, or a child who stutters, who stammers, and then the students in the class laugh when that child speaks, and the teacher laughs. What happens? You have already reinforced the attitude of the other students in the class that it's okay to do that. But if the teacher lovingly corrects that, like I said, there should have been rules, that as students are going into school, such rules are in place. So when that happens, the child, if you have that kind of situation, who's been bullied, bullying can be verbal, whether talking down at how they look, talking down at maybe the knowledge, their intellectual capacity, and saying, even growing up, that's why it's changing now, that in the school setting, if you the way that teachers will rate your scores, when we were growing up, they'll put 0. And they'll draw and then they'll draw the eyes and put the dots and make the child really feel like a non-entity. There's something it does for that child. So we're changing the narratives and saying, you do not do that. So in a lot of cases, we do not even put wrong. So you leave the space, but you can call the child aside and explain to the child why the child has not been able to earn a score. So the way that we relate with them, let's create safe spaces in the class so that child, the teacher can help. Then the teacher or the educators now generally can identify other areas in which that child has strength. So that's why I started by saying we should not just focus on the cognitive,
but their strength as individuals.
Affective, psychomotor. So the child who is not bold enough to be able to stand in class. So you have some who will be in the debating, literary and debating society, they are the life wire, like you say. Some may not be that, they may be shy, but they may be creative. Poem. Acknowledge that child for the strength that child possesses. It might be another child who would have to read the poems, and somebody has the highest score in JAM, has the highest score in WAEC, and nobody celebrates.
My a teenager around, they're like, I don't even feel like going to school today. I'm tired. You know, there's this pressure from school. Can we say the curriculum is a pressure on itself? aside that they have to go to school.
Yes, because of the way it is built, it can mount pressure because we're just focusing on performance.
Okay.
So a child can just go through school, they can afford to just cram, you know, and then when it's exam time, they pour.
That's it.
So who do you leave the children with? Because also of the issues of leaving them with caregivers, quote and unquote, who are the end of society where we're in. We have to start from somewhere.
Yeah.
You know, there's some of these things that are not short-term goals to be able to meet, but are we thinking along those lines to be able to say, okay, in this situation, can we do? So what happens now? Some are in school because they need to prepare for, you know,
the junior WAEC
and all of that. They are in school. So that's why I talked about the school environment, creating safe spaces, safeguarding policy for school environments, so that interpersonal relationship between the children themselves, the adults who are around them. I'm saying the adults, not just the teachers, because you have the teaching, you know, staff and then the non-teaching staff who would also have a relationship with them right from the gate. Right from the gate, and you know the way that they relate with these children. So they are in school. What do we do? And we're not making all of the time in school all just about academic. So we're also talking about co-curricular activities. So in our own time, we talking about Girl Guides, you know, Boy Scouts, Brigade. You know, many of those are not really in place anymore. Because now performance seems to be higher, but there's a kind of balance that's, you know, I know that in the curriculum also is there, that it's really a priority to say in the school you must have co-curricular activities that these children are exposed to so that they can also relax their brain, they can relax their mind, and all the focus is not just on, oh, I need to do math, I need to do biology, so they can also think of being creative. So you're also exposing them to sports, to games, maybe indoor activities whilst they're in school. So we can factor all of those into the times that they will be in school. So because like you said, they're in school apart from the time that it's holiday, normal school time,
through the term.
Apart from maybe the government-owned schools that are usually from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. A lot of the private schools are maybe 5 p.m., you know, and what are they doing most of the time is book from morning till evening. So we need to understand also things that we need to do to help the teenagers cope. So I talked about the coping mechanism. So the exposures that we're giving them, the safe spaces that we're creating for them, avenues also for them to be able to, you know, relax, sleep, siesta.
The issue of siesta, you know, growing up around cousins, we have some people that they call kerosene. They don't serve siesta. Okay, lie down and sleep. They won't sleep. Their eyes will be wide open. You know, children like that, they hardly sleep during siesta.
They hardly sleep. So, but you are creating a space for them that's why we say also that, for instance, in their bedrooms, it's a no-no to put a TV in the bedroom. Because what you're doing with the mind it's continuously agitated and at work. So they leave the sitting room, they go to the bedroom, the TV is on. But you know these days, the TV does not even need to be on. What we have the smartphone. So we're also saying to ourselves, we can do better. Can we have scheduled screen time? But it begins with us as the adults that they see. So if daddy is saying, let's have scheduled screen time, and daddy is still on the phone, then it wouldn't work. So we need to model. You know, I talked about modeling. So let's model this. And you know that the way that the brain is wired to work, all through the day, you've had access to all manner of things on social media. Dopamine is being released. It gets to a point where you're just so at that excited mode, but you need to calm down. So I was saying that it's usually advised that about an hour at least before sleep, make sure that you're not on the phone. You put it aside, and of course you can leave out the spiritual. You know, I talked about that tripartite nature. So the connectivity where you're connecting, helping the teenagers to be able to connect spiritually through prayers, meditation on wholesome content. Because I won't just say meditation, because they can meditate on unwholesome, unhealthy content that will still affect them. So what exposure are we also giving them in inculcating morals, teaching, instructions, like you say, moral instructions that you have in schools? So bringing that spiritual connectivity, helping them to understand, like I said, the place of perception, the place of process, because some who have become suicidal because they're not able to cope with the agitations. So we talked about coping mechanism. So we're teaching resilience. That yes, life is not a bed of roses. We need to teach that. We need to talk about that and also share our stories.
Okay, before we begin to share stories now, we still need to go on the short break. Please stay with us. It's still the Mid-Morning Show. All right, it's still the Mid-Morning Show. You're welcome back. And we have our guest with us. We have Mrs. Oluwatoyin Ogedengbe. She's a professional counselor and sexual integrity educator. All right, so, ma'am, I would like us to talk about this aspect because so many parents out there, they are suffering from mental health crisis. So how can they help their children that are actually suffering from mental health crisis?
Thank you so much. It's so important, and that's why we have people like myself. We have counselors, we have therapists, and that's why I say to people that do not feel bad, or it's not out of place for you to go seek help. Help is available. Help is available. Many times also we spiritualize some of these things. Say, oh, just be praying, just keep praying. There's a place and a time where you pray. There's a place and a time where you need support system. So the support system can be in form of family, the people who are around you who understand, that this person is dealing with something and they can help that person. Then, we talked about what leads to this mental health issue as stressors. So as adults, to be able to identify, we'll also teach the children, what are these stressors? What are the things that are stressing me, for goodness sake? And prioritize. And are there some of these things? Like I said, there's some. As an adult, you know what you're earning, but you want to impress people. You want to go to every party. You want to wear every ashwebi. But you don't have the means. Even if you have the means, is that what life is all about? You should be able to say no. So there are times where you'll be able to say, I'm sorry, in a very polite way, but I'm not able to do this at this time. So prioritize your schedules. What are the things that are stressing you? Identify, let me start with say, identify the stressors. So when you identify the stressors, so you're looking at, what do I need to deal with? Yes. What do I need to do away with? Some associations that I need to cut off from because they consistently and continually mount pressure on you to be who you are not meant to be. So all the focus, all that they're bringing about, and we talked about, recently BBL and all of, and the likes. So who are the people in your life, in your space, really? What are they saying to you? So are they saying things to you that stress you? You have a right to cut off such relationships. And then life is in phases. Men are in sizes. That you have not attained to this level at this time does not mean that you cannot attain to that level. Be diligent, be focused, have mentors. So now, for children, we talk about co-creating solution for them when they have mental health issues. Now, in therapy and in counseling, we have safe spaces where people who deal with similar issues,
They're put together.
they come together and they share experiences.
Do we do
So-
that in Nigeria?
Yes, it happens. So you
Okay.
have that, we have that in counseling practice and therapy, so that you know that you are not alone. You are not the only one. Because one of the things that will cause or increase mental health issues will be a situation where you're feeling like you are the only one. Nobody else is having this kind of issue. And there's nothing new. There's nothing new under heaven. So we need to be able to speak to ourselves. So parents, I want to appeal to parents, please identify what the stressors are. Some parents, you cannot afford to send your children to some certain schools because of the fees. But because you want to belong, because of the status, you know, sometimes because you want to belong to a class and you put yourself under undue pressure. I want to say to you, there are children who go to public schools, government-owned schools, and who are doing well. So it's more about what you're putting in that child. That aside from what the child is getting at the school, what are you able to provide for the child at home in terms of support, in terms of what you are able to buy for them? So the exposures at the level of, oh, this person celebrated the child's first birthday in a way, and every, tongues are rolling. People are talking about it. It's trending. Then you too, you want to do something that must trend. You want to chase clout. You want the likes. You don't need it. So when we get to the point where we're saying to ourselves, I am enough in who God has made me to be. We're not saying be lazy. We're not saying belittle yourself. We're not saying do not have ambition, but have positive ambition.
But we have teenagers, and they are not in a good home,
Yes.
so to say, and they have found themselves lost. No one to go to. They don't have any figure to hold on to. They are lost. They are quiet. They are still. They have nothing. So what's that word? Because we could have them watching right now. So what's your message to such a teenager who has no home?
Thank you so much. Yes, there are children whom the society has failed, and families, dysfunctionality in families, violence in families that they've seen has also impacted on their well-being, and some of them are not able to speak up. Some of them are out there. We have organizations, networks, non-governmental organizations that, speak to issues like this, who go to schools. I run an NGO, we go to schools. There's the Child Protection Network as well, that is there. We have an association also that is in charge of homes, shelters, orphanages. So there are children like that. So if maybe you are there, of children who are just out there on the street. I recall, I think it was even referred by, it was by BCOS some time ago. That's what we're saying. Let's all be upstanders. Let's not just be bystanders. And I must commend what BCOS did at the time. I was state coordinator of Child Protection Network on your state. So it was one of the reporters who cited 2 children who were hawking during school hours. So he didn't just look at them and say, oh, sorry. He engaged. Why are you on the street? You're supposed to be in school at this time. Why are you not in school? And they said to him that they were staying with their mother who was ill, so they needed to hawk to make some sales. And he followed them truly and found out that the mother was actually ill. Child Protection Network was invited, but the process of time, unfortunately, the mother passed. So timing also very important.
So we should
but
prompt.
Eventually the children were helped and taken to. You have the Ministry of Women Affairs and Social Inclusion. So such cases must be appropriately, must be reported to appropriate authorities, so that, because you could also be liable to, say, oh, you want to help, but make sure that the help is properly channeled so you can help such children. So when you see such children, I saw one at some point, Bodija Market, was school day, and, the Alabaru thing, young, pretty girl saying, Mommy, can I help you with your work? I'm looking, no, you're supposed to be in school at this time. So all of us, like I said, should be upstanders, be concerned. You cannot handle or deal with all of the situations. That's why the government necessarily must step in. A lot of the children that we see on the street, there must be a political will to see what can be done about the plight of these children. So for the young girl, a teenager she was at the time, what are you doing in the market at this time? She says, oh, she needed to pay for the junior WAEC. Money was not available. The mother was late. The father had, issues with sight. She was living with grandma. Grandma couldn't afford. So she said to herself to go into the market and just do some work, which was really laudable. I mean, another child would have, there could be some other influence that say, oh, go sleep with someone, they will give you money. But she was also vulnerable, because in that space, that's not a safe space for a child. You have adults who can take advantage of her vulnerability at that point. But it was commendable that she thought about that. So as an adult who is, standing up, engaging the child to say, are you sure? Where is the school? Mentions the name of the school. Say, okay, tomorrow, make sure you wear your uniform. I will meet you in that school. And so it was, as she said, that on the record, she hadn't paid. But unfortunately, she was marked present for the time that she was not even in school. So that's another part to it. But what we're saying, that child, there was something she was dealing with at that time. That kind of thing can lead a child to depression, because other students are in school. She's not in school. Other children are paying fees to write exam. She's not able to. So that's why we're calling also on public-spirited individuals. You see such cases. There's so much money flying around that can be used positively, committed to better use that than being currently used for, that we can set up schools. We can have such children sent to school, tuition paid. It's not just having the tuition free, but educational supplies. When I was in primary school, we had in Lagos State, you had your books, you had your writing, the stationery and all of that free. So we have public-spirited individuals who can be concerned about such. Today, that child has finished our OND. And a lot more, but that's just one child. That's just one.
But we can do
we can do more. Every one of us can do more when we become upstanders. If that child didn't get that help, like I said, it could lead to depression for that kind of child. I mean, you've heard cases of children who even failed exams and they actually committed suicide. At some point, I remember with the JAMB results, some of the students who couldn't, secure admission, some became suicidal, and like we said also, what they're saying